We can hear clear.
Okay, good. I'll be right with you in a second. We have a special host. I have Yisrael Bogopolsky here in person. We have to stretch it to him.
This goes in for me. I mean, it's for me, not for me.
Okay, need to get a coffee because we have a lot to cover today, guys. And we're probably going to go, if anybody needs to leave, you can leave, but I'll see you here at the end, but we're going to probably have to go over to finish. We're trying to try to speak through the main Nakudas of Celebration and Gimel, through Aleph through Dalet today, if we can. We'll see how far we can get. Okay, we'll start with the Bir Halacha, the Ramaska Litain, the beginning of Rishon and Gimel. So the Bir Halacha topic, according to the Rambam, if it helps to have a covering, a metal covering. He seems to learn, possibly according to Rashi, we saw Rashi said that al gabav meant al tas shel gabav, on top of the metal covering. The Rashi explained al gabav, but the metal covering in the Chazon Ish is a from the Rashi that we see from here that a blech doesn't help. It's covered with a metal covering over the fire doesn't help. Chazon Ish, you're not actually putting something on the actual goof of the coals. So Chazon Ish held that's not called gar for katzim, and it's medayik that from that Rashi. And so the Bir Halacha over here is medayik from Lashon Rambam that even though he holds it is a little mashma from there like that, from the Rashi it is mashma that way, but the Divrei Rambam it says ein mashna so al gabi eish b'Shabbos mashma lachora al gabi kisui ein b'chal al gaba because it's not al gabi eish mamish. So Chazon Ish also disagreed with Mishnah Rua's diak from the Rambam. However, we learned in Rashi and the Rambam as well that the Chazon Ish's diuk would not really apply bisman aseh. Perhaps you could be like that from Rashi bisman num, that was the normal way. They had two different ways of cooking. They had a way of cooking when the metal plate was away or when it was on there. If you didn't want it to get so hot, you would put the metal plate on it, or if you wanted to get over the fire and not on the side of the walls, it was a derech bishul like that. I'm saying today that it's not derech bishul at all. Nobody cooks by putting a metal plate over their pot over their fire anymore. There's no such thing. So obviously, if you're putting it there, then it's the same hecker that you're not planning to be. So it would work, and that's where Moshe we saw in a tshuva did that way as well, and that's the minig olam that we do use a blech, but it's really ties down to just the no misad the makaras. It ties down and back to this Bir Halacha. So we're just going to go sort of like point by point through the different. We got some different Mishnah Berurahs and different Bir Halachas through this siman and various points. They're not necessarily connected to each other. The Bir Halacha to Maskil Hashoso, he says that the Shehiyah that's also, he says, is L'tzorach Halayla. That's the Lashon HaTorah, that it's L'tzorach Halayla, because if it's, so he explains that L'tzorach Halayla, that only then is there a tzadi going to be Machata B'Gacholin, because if you need it that night, then maybe it's not hot enough, and you'll gain something by Machata B'Gacholin. If you need it for tomorrow, it's on the fire for tomorrow, then chiti b'gachol is not going to help anything, and it's going to stay overnight anyway. And fakir, on the opposite, you don't want to be you don't want to get it too hot. It's not a it's a cross country run. It's not a 100-yard dash like it was for Friday night. You want it for that night. It's gonna be like, so you want to speed it up and get it ready for that now for the orchim coming. On Shankan, if it's going to be for tomorrow, not that way. So the Shabur says that you can be samach on that only b'diavad b'shas chak, and not to get used to doing that because it's a chiddush in the Torah to say that because the Gemara is not machalik. Nobody said nowhere in the sugya do we say the difference between Laila and Yom. The Torah puts that in. Maybe it's pasha to the Torah. It's not pasha in the sharp post because it's not mentioned. So that's why the Real Lacha says only to be samach on that b'shas chak. So if you really have to, there's no other choice, and you need it for tomorrow. There's no way to do gar for katim, and then there's what to be samach on b'diavad b'shas chak. So if maybe you're for the Shabbaton, and you want to put the chont up, and no arrangements are made to make a blech, and it's going to be for tomorrow, and without this, you're not going to have the chont on the Shabbaton. So then there's this pir halacha, this lashon of Torah to be samachan.
So I'm making the blech like on Shabbos.
You're
making a new blech right now.
Well, we're talking about doing שהייה without a blech in a case where, let's say, it's partially cooked. Let's say you started cooking the chont. It's bashal below bashal. It didn't get to macham ben rasah yet. So it's partially cooked, so you need a blech. Right?
So if you don't blech, it works for the next day.
So it's for the next day. If you don't have a blech, then there's the b'shas chak is what to rely on to leave the chont on the fire for the sake of the whole. Otherwise, the whole Shabbaton won't have chont tomorrow. Okay.
Wait, we're talking about Chazar or Shahir with that specific point?
No, Chazar for sure not.
So Shahir before Shabbos?
Shahir before Shabbos by without a blech when it's, let's say, partial. Well, let's say according to us, that's according to the Shulchan Aruch, it'll be anything less than Mistamach Varaldo. According to Ashkenazim, it'll be anything which is like bashal below bashal. It'll be partially cooked but not yet macham ben rasah. If it's macham ben rasah, then we have to rely on even without all this. You could use it even for the night, the night. You can use it because it's macham ben rasah.
That's like a tchila also.
The way we possibly, the way we said last week, according to the Chazon Ish, not like the Mishnah Berurah learned that it's only b'diavad with the rush, but the way the Chazon Ish in the rush said it's l'hatchila, and that's how we're knowing. So if it is macham ben rasah, it's not an issue at all. So we're talking less than that. Then there's what to be samachan for the next day if you don't have it. You don't have a blech.
Wait, so just a quick question, like with soup, because I was thinking about this last week, with soup or something like that, like what's the level of macham ben rasah by a liquid? Like how hot does it have to be considered macham ben rasah?
That's a question which I was speaking to Dora about this yesterday. It's almost like an unresolved question. It's a very, very difficult question. How do you establish macham ben rasah? Does it go by Zman? If it takes an hour to cook it, you cook 20 minutes of the shlish. So Chazon Ish points out one point that makes no sense because you could sometimes have a thing that cooks for a long time and it doesn't start actually. You feel the cooking until it gets much further in as far as the mind goes. So that's a halal an issue of like what's considered macham ben rasah. It would have to be it's cooked to the point that you could eat it in a shas chak. It would be considered you're eating somewhat cooked food. If you're really stuck, you could eat it.
But like liquid, like water, like if you're putting on an urn, like you can drink it even if it's not cooked at all. Like that's why it's confusing for me. Or like soup that's already cooked and you're reheating it, but because it's cold now, so it's not considered bishul.
Yeah, so I mean the cooked soup, which is already edible the way it is cold, you just want to have it hot. So it's questionable. Maybe it's already macham ben rasah. Maybe it's already it's inside hilchos bishul, so there's bishul deraisa in it. But as far as mechater b'gachalim, would you stir the coals to make it hotter? Would a person do that? It's already edible the way it is. Questionable. So if it gets warm, once it gets warm, I would think it's already macham ben rasah for sure. It's already preheating soup.
So you should definitely put like the urn on, like that happens every week. I was just saying, you should put the urn on way before Shabbos, that it's hot before Shabbos, though.
The urn is really not an issue because there's no dargos chom in it. We'll speak about. We're going to speak later about the What about a hot plate that doesn't have different levels of heat to it? So Zalman holds that that's garfa katzim already. That there's no way to be. It's like kash. It's like kash. So we say there's no problem in hata b'kalim because there's no way to stir those, right? So we see this. It's telling you that if it's possible to stir, there's nothing. If there's nothing to be stirred, then there's no shash. So an urn doesn't usually have different levels, and it's just an urn. It's just it's either boil or not. If you put it in boil, then I don't think that's an issue anyway. To put it right before Shabbos.
So and garva katzim, you can put something that's even not bishul at all, or that's not malcham decide if it's garva katzim.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's the whole point of it, is that something which you might stir, then you made a garfa katzim, you're not going to stir it. That's the hecker. That's the whole accomplishment of garfa katzim. So a thing which is essentially considered garfa katzim because its very essence, because it doesn't have what to stir. There's nothing no up and down. There's no levels of buttons. There's no knobs or anything. So then it's a machlokas. Chazanish or called legozer. I mean, sorry, lo plug. That once he said, putting on a fire, they meant any fire, even a fire like that. But unless it's garfa katzim, but Ramosh and Rosh Zalman hold on that way. They hold that if it's nothing to be stirred, then we have plenty of rise to that. That for this looking to say that's like garfa katzim, so it's not an issue. So I think urn will be the same thing.
So the Chazanish would do garva katzim on like a hot plate. He wouldn't consider that to be anything different than a stove.
Yeah, he holds a low plug, right?
Yeah.
But Ramesh and Rosh Zalman hold not that way, and that's why I pass on and people ask.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now in Mishnah Berurah, Snifkat and Tess, also in the Bir Halacha, Der Masla Mesiach, speaks about the heter of Basar Chai. That we had. Okay, the situation is for the Gemara is that if you have we're passing that Gemara back in Daf Yches, if you have a Basar Chai, like you have let's say a shon that needs to be garfa katzim, because right now it's bashal below bashal, it's partially cooked but not machman soy, and so if you don't have a blech, you can put a raw piece of meat in it, basar chai, and that's magala that you don't plan to stir, because it's not going to be ready for the suda that night anyway. Which that's a little bit of a raya, by the way, to the tour. Maybe it could be the tour derived his svara of what you need it for balayla, because the basar chai, it's only not going to be fit for the night. It's not going to not be fit for the next day. It for sure will be by the next day. So it could be that the Torah derives that the whole thing is totally on whether you need it for that night or not from that halacha of basar chai, just a hara. So now the let's say with our gas or electric stoves that they cook very quickly. So according to some poskim, which were Shlomo Zalman and Yashiv, they hold that since our stoves cook much more quickly than theirs did, because they have, you can put them up very high and they're very powerful. So obviously a piece of meat, raw meat, can be cooked by that night. In the next couple hours, you could easily cook a piece of raw meat. So they hold that the whole heter of basar chai is gone for us. Now, I think one exception to that would be, we'll speak out the machlokas. This is not like the Chazanish is called. The Chazanish holds that even by our stoves, since Alpi Rov Bet Mizman Chazal, a basar chai was something that would not be ready for that night. So they just weren't gozer. There's like a sword of lo gozer. Familiar with that sword? Lo gozer, we have it by different places in halacha. For example, let's say by a shir kagris, by a kesem, for a nida. The shir kagris is let's say the size of, according to Moshe, the size of a penny. According to Chazanish, it's an asimon, might be a fraction of a different. Remember, if any of you remember an asimon, those little coins for the telephones, for the phone booths that you would throw with a hole in the middle. Anyway, it's very close to a penny. So that's the size that anything less than that is not metame and if she finds a kesem. So the question is why? Why not? Because if Chazal The reason Chazal were mikol for that size of a shear is because in those days they had what's called macholis, like a bedbugs everywhere, and it said that if you're going to be gozer less than the size of the blood that would come if you would roll over in bed, the Gemara says that it was ein l'chal kol mita v'mita. There's no bed she'ein bo kama tipe down, doesn't have a few spots of blood in it, because every time you roll over in bed, you're going to crush the bedbug. But the size of the dam that would come out of the bedbug was like less than the size of a penny. So Chazal were makel because otherwise, Gemara says you're not going to leave a single Jewish girl, the Muteris Labaila, if you're going to be machmer for dam less than the size of a penny, because of all these bed bugs. They're going to always be cautious that she had a stain coming from her. So Chazal were not gozer in that time, during the time of those bugs. So the shalos today, what about today? They don't have those bed bugs. So we say that once Chazal were makel for that shear, they said that they kaveya a shear. So then it was like gozer. The whole din of Ksamim is derbanan. It's the whole thing we did derbanan to begin with, because Midaraisa, she used to have hargosha, she has to have self to dam coming out, and she didn't. She just found a stain, found a kesem. Midaraisa is not to me. It's only a din derbanan. It's a chumer derbanan, and because Midaraisa will say since she didn't feel anything, it came out, must have come from somewhere else, not from her. But Midrabanan we say it came from her. However, they were makel when it was less than a kigris because of those bugs. So once the Chazal lo gozer b'shas takanas, when the Chazal word gozer, the whole takanas ksamim, and that's when they first said that gzera, and they were makel when it's less than a kigris, less than the size of a penny. And we can't come along now and say, okay, now there's no bugs, so we're not now. We can't make up a new gzeras Chazal. Chazal just never gozer that to begin with when it's less than that size because of that reason. So whenever there's a swear of lo gozeru, then we can come along later and say it's different now. We can't come up and make up a new gzeres chachamim. So the Chazon Ish holds that since they weren't gozer by basar chai, because in those days basar chai would not be ready for the normal meal in time. You put a raw piece of certain types of meat in there to take a long time to cook. So we have the swear of lo gozeru that they weren't gozer by basar chai. So when you put it basar chai in, it's a gilui das, and it works as the gilui das even for our stoves because all the gozer when they that's the for the Chazon Ish. But the Mishnah Berurah's lashon in Sifkat and Tess is very much mashma, and you see why the Rabbi Yosef and Rishon Zalman are not that way. That there is no svar with gozer over here, because he says. Mishnah Berurah says dafka basar chai she'iyashar lizbashal etzorach sudas alayla. Other things which are, let's say, vegetables and other things which are easy to cook, then it doesn't help that it's raw. Whatever it says, same thing as by basar. Remember, there's this totally in whether it's possible or not possible. So they hold that there's no svar of lo gozer over here. It's not like they weren't gozer by chai. It's not like they were the kanas chazal were never said by chai like it was less than a kigris by ksamim. Here was a practical thing, whether it's going to be ready for a night or not. It wasn't. So when it was practical that it wouldn't be ready, then it was a simon. Now it's no longer a simon. It's no longer a heker or gili das. If it can be cooked tonight. So that's just for Shlomo Zalman Rabbi Yosef. I think the exception to that, even today, will be let's say a cholent pot, a slow cooker. A slow cooker, let's say you have one with an adjustable knobs, and you didn't do garfakatim, you didn't put aluminum foil in there. Which, by the way, aluminum foil, the post can say that like one piece of aluminum foil is not considered garfakatim. It has to be something which minimizes the chum somewhat, so it has to be more than one piece, more something that will minimize the chum a little bit. But let's say you put a couple pieces of aluminum foil in your, you didn't put it in a cholent pot, and you have an adjustable cholent pot. So right before Shabbos, you put in a basar chai, you put a piece of raw meat in there, some raw cholent meat. So there, Rabbi Yosef and Rishon Zalman will agree that basar chai does help. It's a gilui das because by a slow cooker, so then even if you put it on the highest heat, you're not going to have it ready for that night. It's still going to take till the next day anyway. So it is a good gilui. The other food will cook quicker. The other vegetables and stuff in there might cook quicker, but the raw meat right before Shabbos will not be ready for that meal for sure that night. So therefore, it would be a good gilui das, the kuli alma, even according to Rishon Zalman Rabbi Yosef.
So, in other words, Rosh Zalman's reading the Mishnah Berurah, not necessarily as saying dafka meat, but he's sort of reading the Mishnah Berurah a little bit lav dafka, and just saying that he said basar chai as like an example of something that that doesn't cook quickly.
Yeah, if you find something else that's like meat, it'll be the same thing.
Right.
I think that everybody agrees to. Just the question is though, is that therefore do you say if you put the Chazal said lo gozer even in a case where it will cook? Well, basar chai, like putting a piece of basar chai l'shem, you say you l'shem yichud kushavrichu v'shchinte, and l'shem mitzvahs not needing garfa katam, and then you plunge a piece of basar chai into the and then you put it on the stove with the heat, full heat. So is that considered hecker or not? Will that work or not? The Chazon Ish holds it would because basar chai is lo gozru. They weren't gozer the need for garfa katam when you put basar chai. And according to Rosh Hashanah, it's a more practical thing. It's not low gozer, just will it cook or not. And if it will, then all your shem yichud won't help anything because it's still going to be cooked. You have to put something that won't be cooked, and that won't really be shy by unless you put it in like a slow cooker or something, or you put. I mean, even if you put it on a low heat, let's say you put it on you put it on a pot with basar chai on the stove, on the gas stove. You had it in a very low heat. It won't be cooked till that night, but Hagufa, since you could heat it up, that's good for the shash garfa katam of shemi chatem begaholim. You might stir the coals, you might turn the knob. So that's why you need to that's why you need to cover the thing. But the basar chai won't help in that case because low heat now. But all of a sudden you realize a bunch of guests. You just got a message from shul. Your little boy ran over from shul and said, "Oh, Tati just invited 12 more people for tonight." So. And you have that food on there for tomorrow. You have no guests, so you might turn the oive and his guests. I need this meat for now. So shem yichatim v'chalim, and the basar chai won't help because it will be ready if you put that on higher heat.
Is basar chai limited to basar? Could be anything that needs to be cooked.
Well, I mean, the only case they had would take that along with it was basar. But if you would find something else out there that would,
I think with beans, they're raw. That yeah.
if it's found in Tzias. If it's right, and if you'd find those beans will not be ready with the lower heat. If the canteen won't be ready by that night, then same problem. I mean, it will help as well. It'll help, yeah. So the place let's say the mukum that they would help, then let's say for us Lididan would be to put the uncooked beans, the dry beans into the chulun pot. So then you wouldn't need to garfa katzim, even though the rest of the chulun's partially cooked already. Right. Putting that in there would be gala that you don't need it for that night. And
you're also not allowed though to like play games and like meaning because he makes this low gazru shita, but like what if you actually do want the food for that night? You wouldn't be able to like play games with that, right?
But you put basar chai.
Basar chai, you say, oh, it's basar chai, that's fine, but then like you want it for that night.
Basically, again, in the winter, sorry.
In the winter.
Yeah, in the winter you're gonna have like a tish or whatever.
Again, the temperature.
Yeah, it's still low gozru. I mean, low gozru, it'll still work.
Even what if it's like a legit stove and it's like gonna cook fully, like for dinner time?
That's good for the Chiddush al Chazon Ish. That's you see why Rosh Hashanah actually didn't hold that way because it's not Megala Das on anything. Chazon Ish held that it's
but he's saying it's still Megala Das. But if you're doing it so that you're going to eat it that night, like it's Megala Das, it's not even there.
Well, Megala Das that you're not going to stir because you put a raw meat like that's just a lot more gozer for that. It's a little hard to understand. Why it's a different type of low gozer a little bit than the ksum, but that's what he holds. But Lamaisa, I would say it would not help. You would need garfa katam.
Lamaisa would not help because you don't like the Chazon Ish. Because
of some don't hold the Chazon Ish.
But like let's say in your scenario, let's say that happens right before Shabbos. Someone calls you like I just heard a story recently actually, like where someone's like family arrived from Israel without like a crazy family. They didn't tell them they were coming, and like they showed up like an hour before Shabbos. So like let's say that happens. Like, could you rely on the Chazon Ish and throw in some raw meat and like cook it for dinner?
Well, you couldn't you can't put a blith.
No, let's say you like prepare like 3 pieces of chicken. Now you need 5 more. So like, can you put 5 pieces of raw chicken into the pot, put it in the oven for Shabbos?
I would not think so. That's exactly the case that they're talking about. That to say they're saying don't rely on it because that's exactly where he was.
We still can rely on the Chazon Ish even Shas Chad.
It's hard to because they're holding. I mean, like today's postscript are holding that it's it has to be gar forgotten. So.
But would you be able to eat it if you did? If you held it?
Yeah, because if straight with some on the Chazon Ish.
Okay, but
he did it, but to do it, I'd be prepared to do that.
Chazon Ish is like very unpopular in this sugya.
He has his own way of looking at things, but we are somewhat on the Chazon Ish for the against the Mishnah Berurah. The Minhag Olam is like the Chazon Ish for the biggest question of all, really, that whether the rush means that we're we hold a Chanani l'chatchila or only Yerushalayim shouldn't be samach on it.
Right.
That the Mishnah Berurah holds is machmer, and we're Nikolai Chazon Ish that the Mishnah Berurah meant, and that the rush meant even l'chatchila once we paskin like Chanani, we paskin that way. So probably the most central question of the whole sugya, we actually go with Chazon Ish. Okay. Now we're talking about the hedge of Basar Chai. The Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Yud. He says the lashon it needs to be samach l'shkia mamish. So Rosh Hashanah is medayek from that when it's the samach l'shkia mamish, then it means mamish shkia. That so it goes by shkia. Like when does that have to be high and not have started cooking at all by? So Mishnah Berurah's lashon mashma that has to be high and very close to the actual shkia to put it in. Like a few minutes before. Obviously, I'm not going to do it pashkia or ashkia, but a few minutes, a little bit before, 5 minutes before, 10 minutes before, whatever. The only that's Basar Chai. If we put it in earlier than that, let's say we put it in before Kabbalah Shabbos. Kabbalah Shabbos is going to be half hour before that. By the time, if it's a decent fire going, then by the time it gets to shkia, it's already going to be partially cooked. So it doesn't help that it was high before. So it needs to be high mamish. Still be raw when shkia comes in, when Shabbos comes in. Others are cholik on that. That he's like Rosh Hashanah is stopik, whether let's say if the tzibur is makabel Shabbos, the whole tzibur is makabel, then we say is the chai is to be chai at the time that the tzibur is makabel Shabbos, because then it's not up to him to be makabel Shabbos or not at that point. Once his whole tzibur he's part of is makabel Shabbos, and he's part of that, then for all intents and purposes, then it's really Shabbos for him. So it's considered chai when Shabbos came in because the tzibur is makabel Shabbos at that time. But if he's makabel Shabbos, it doesn't work. And this has to be chai b'shas shkia. But Nissim Karelitz his cholik on Rosh Hashanah, he holds that it makes that Chazal knew that there's a mitzvah of Hostif Mechol al Kodesh, and it's a mitzvah to be maktim Shabbos, right? To bring in Shabbos earlier. So when they said chai at the Knesset Shabbos, they meant whenever you're makabel Shabbos. So it's going to be totally in kol echad be'echad. If you're makabel Shabbos, when you're makabel Shabbos, it should be chai. Which so according to that, it would be like if you put in the Basar Chai and it's half hour before, then put it on and then right away be makabel Shabbos, and then that'll help according to Mr. Karelitz. It won't help according to Mr. Zalman. So it's a little bit of an unclear question of when exactly is the kvias of the moment of Basar Chai. So again, for us not so nagia, mostly just be nagia by a cholent pot, by a slow cooker. Okay. All right. We just spoke about the in the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Yud where he says, moving along, that there's no chashash kitui by straw. By kash v'gavava, we said it's only chashash kitui by wood and things like that when you have real coals. So that's where that's where it really comes in the discussion of is your plata, like the hot plates that don't have a up and down button, they don't have an adjustable button, is that considered like kash? Or do we say logos that we said the chazanish? So it's logozru and what we call like Ramesh and Rosh Zalman that it's fine. I think there's a sharker raya to their shita from the sugya of gachalim she'imumu. Remember the sugya of gachalim she'imumu? We said that if the Gemara put a few things together. The Gemara said that if you had you were garfa katum and then kitma וחזרה v'nislabta. The Gemara said if you covered it with ashes and then some air blew in or something like that and it reflamed up again. So there we say that it still works. It's still good. Even though it's chazor and slapta. So and then the Gemara goes on to say as well that in the same sugya that gachalu imumu with the same thing. If you have coals that already have like minimized their heat, and you put the pot on there, so then that's also considered like kafir kafir shaz. Why you didn't do anything? It's not you didn't put any covering over it. It just warmed up. It went down on its own. So why would they be considered kafir kafir? So the Rashba said over there. The Rashba says the pshat is that since you could have heated it up to a normal heat, and now they're just like smoldering coals. They're just red, but they're not really flaming up. You could have done that. The fact that you didn't do that and you put a pot on there the way it is, that itself, that hanacha on gachol she'imu, that hanacha is almost like a hanacha of gilui das. You're showing your megala das. You don't care about the chitu. You don't care about this heating up so fast. Otherwise, you would have before you put the pot down. So that's a chiddush, but that's the Rashba explains that Gemara, and that will, I think, be a type of a gilui das as well. Even though you didn't do any kind of a garfa katam on the hot plate, the fact that you put it on a hot plate instead of on a regular fire, on a warming plate that only warms and it doesn't heat, doesn't really cook it. Or even it does cook it, but it's only one. It doesn't cook as well as a real fire. So then putting it on that would be similar to the Rashba. That itself putting it on that type of thing is like a type of a gilui das that works. That's how Rosh Zalman and Ramosha are learning. Okay.
So you wouldn't need foil on that. You wouldn't need any type of layer on that.
You wouldn't need that. That's the chiddush. You wouldn't need foil. You wouldn't need foil on that.
Hot plate, just plug it. No knobs.
No knobs. Right. And Rosh Zalman holds that it works for Shia and Chazara. It's considered it itself. It's essentially a davar at garfa katam, so therefore it helps for Shia and Chazara.
Wait, but that's even if it had knobs, you're saying, because like the fact that it's not
without knobs.
So what's the chiddush of the Rashba then? What's he adding in with Icham Sham?
I'm saying that like there's you see over from the Rashba thing that there's not like a sort of low plug. To say everything has to be garfa katam mamish, and there's low plug on that. Even if you can't stir it, it's low plug. Part of that Gemara is a steer to that. You did nothing to it over there, and Chazal said it's still mutter because putting it on that type of fire is a gilui das. So just right, and over there there is even worse, I think, than a hot plate, because there you could theoretically stir the coals. Even so, the fact that you didn't is still called a gilui das.
So the chiddush is that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to change. You don't have to do an action of
correct. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be somebody would know you're going to be doing, taking off and putting it back on again. You want to be machmir like the Chazanish and others that we do say low plug, so that, you could add a couple pieces of aluminum foil on there. It's not too big of a tircha, but then if you need to, then it's okay with Shia and Chazar according to Rosh Zalman.
That would refer to cholent pot also, because you don't have to put foil underneath the cholent pot if you cover the knobs.
If you cover, well, no, that's different. If it's adjustable, so then that's a machlokas. That's already a machlokas. Whether we spoke this out one time, whether covering the knobs is enough, or if you plan to do chazara on it and has adjustable, the different adjustments on it. So Rabban Kotler held that it was enough to cover the knob. That's the ikar, because that's the place that you do kitui today is on the knobs, not on the fire. In those days, you stirred the fire, so you had to cover the fire. Today, it's all on the knobs, so you cover the knobs enough. But other poskim were cholik on this, including Ramosha. Ramosha holds that that today the ikar is really covering the fire still. So that's the way Chazal said it. And according to Rav Moshe Sfor, really, there's no need to, ikar didn't have to cover the knobs, but he says it's still ideal. It's better to cover the knobs to be Yod say the other. It's not also because that is the Makam L'chitui. Today, it's Chalak Etzim from the way it was B'zman Chazal. B'zman Chazal, the Eish and the Makam L'chitui is all one place. It's all one and the same. Today it's separate, right? The Eish is one thing and the knobs are something else. So Rav Moshe had, if you remember, had a series of sforas. One svora was that maybe there is no din of garf katam at all today because there's no way to cover the fire. So maybe they weren't talking about this type of a fire. There's no way to do garf katam on the etzim. Garf will be sweeping it away, which obviously you don't do today, and the katam would be covering the actual goof of the fire itself, which you can't do either. You're not actually putting anything on the mucker of the fire, like on the coals. It's just on a level above the fire. So Moshe had a tzad to say that, and another tzad Moshe said, another kiddush was that Chazal were never gozer. They were only gozer you might stir the coals. They weren't gozer you might add more wood onto the coals. Even if the wood might be right there next to it, we don't find such a xer. They might add more wood on. So he says today to turn the gas, let's say, is like adding more wood onto the fire because you're adding more gas onto it. So maybe that's not even machlal b'hol xera. However, he certainly Machmer and says we do need to cover it, and we need to. Those as far as to say that the whole din garf katon isn't going to apply today. The need for garf katon is maybe it's the whole thing is outside the xeris chazal. But the Maisa he is Machmer, and Machmer writes that for sure covering the fire, and it's kedai to cover also the knobs. He says so. But so that's when you have something which is adjustable. We're talking about hot plate which is not adjustable, so then that would be a different getter altogether. Then that word Moshe would holds that it's not b'chlal xeris hitui at all. It's like a kolshkin from the other case that even by a electric is similar in that way. Where Moshe Sfora, let's say turning up a knob by an electric heating is similar to what he says that's also like adding more wood. It's like adding more electricity. It's adding more wood onto the fire. So Ramosh Ikridin holds really that maybe that's not called xera, but Maisi is Machmer. There's nothing to turn, and that's different. But a small pot that has what to turn, so then it wouldn't be enough to cover the knobs. Aram Kotler would say, yeah, it's enough, but once Ramosh you'd have to cover the gufa himum, which is the heating element, which is inside surrounding the pot. He said he has to cover that, and in order to do chazara for Shehiyah, if it's already micro underside, then you don't need it for Shehiyah. Not a problem. But let's say if you're concerned, you might want to add water to it. Let's say because a lot of times it gets dried. You check it before you go to shul. It's getting dry. You want to add water to it. So then you can't add. You're not allowed. We'll see later on. Saw the Beis Yosef brought down the kolbo. You can't add water into food while it's on the fire because of megis. It's considered like stirring. And he says stirring a pot while it's on the fire, it's a chiddush of the kolbo, that's considered bishul. A huge question of why that's bishul. Everybody saw the Beis Yosef. That's a very famous kolbo that he brings up in Sif Dalet, I think. He brings down the Beis brought the kolbo that stirring even water, he says, even water that's on the fire to stir that or to pour water into it, which will cause it to stir. That's considered megis, and that's the type of bishul. It's a huge question. Achronim, Shlomo Zalman there was a bit pella utzim by him. What kind of bishul is it? It's mamish b'mushel kol tzarko, completely, totally b'mushel kol tzarko. So why is stirring it on the fire? Why is megis? Why is stirring it? Why is that considered cooking? Huge question. So somebody brought once. There was a new edition of the kolbo that came out, like when it's new and improved. Storm that comes out all the time, and they brought one to Shlomo Zalman as a gift. So the second he got it, they said, "Thank you very much," and then immediately turned it to the place and to see if there's any tikkun in that. Did they find any tikkun in or any explanation in this din of megis? Says that bothered him for many years. Why what's the shot in the kolba? But the Maisi says it, and it's a ksash teraisa, so we have no choice but to do for it. It's actually a question in the Korban Asanel and other Korbanim talk. Are question maybe he meant only Rabbanan, not Deraisa, even though he says a lashon chatas, but it really means Rabbanan. It's a good question. You couldn't just pour the the water directly into the cholent pot. So if you know there's a chance you might want to take it out and put water in it on Shabbos, then you're going to have a question of chazara. So you need to have garf katzim in order to make chazara on it, unless it's a cholent pot that has no up and down, it doesn't have any adjustable knobs to it at all. It's a one heat cholent pot. So then, according to Rishon Zaman, that again would be mutter for chazara even without it. Okay.
So according to Reb Moshe, would there be a way today to like do chazara with a crock pot?
To do what?
To do chazara with a crock pot? If you have to cover mamash before Aish and just covering it up enough.
Yes, see, I do that all the time. I just put a couple layers of aluminum foil inside the, in the base, and then you put the pot in there. So the pot is garf katzim. It's covered around the sides where the heating element is.
And would Reb Moshe care at all about covering the knobs, or he doesn't care about that?
He does care about it. He says affairs that one should cover the knobs. It's better to. In Ikra Din, according to his Torah, it's not necessary, but halacha says you should. For the other shita.
I don't understand why it's different than Gecham Shamu though. Like it's the same Gecham Shamu. You could stir Gecham Shamu, but we say it's fine because it's not jakbishul, and it's a hecker the fact that you're cooking in a way that's not jakbishul. So why is it different by Shalom pot?
Then Gecham Shamu.
Why is it different?
Yeah, you do cook in it. Gecham Shamu you might be cooking also, potentially. It doesn't mean it's not going to cook. It's just going to cook slow.
If you're putting something in Shalom pot, it's a hecker that you're not planning to cook it like immediately. Like that's the whole idea of a Shalom pot. It's a slow cooker.
Mm-hmm. Great question.
Okay.
Great question. I'm not sure what the answer will be, but it could still be that sof kol sof our slow cookers are still a lot faster than Gecham Shamu. We don't. It's hard for us to know what it was like to cook in those days. If you just cook on just coals, there's a sayul lamad from when you have a campfire, you're sleeping outside in the campfire and the coals go down. So, but if you put a pot over it, how long would it take to cook that pot? It would take, it's like a long time. Our cholent pots are still a lot stronger than even that. So say that's a total gilui das. Maybe it's different today. Good question. Okay, the question you're asking is really the fact that you put it in there and you didn't put it on a regular stove. So it's called that kufa gilui das.
Usually it's not gilui das. That's how you cook your crock pot in the crock pot.
Pardon?
You put the crock pot insert goes in the crock. The crock pot insert goes in the crock pot. You don't put it in the oven.
Right, but you could have put it in a regular. Put all the materials in the regular pot and put it on the stove. People do that sometimes. So, obviously you wouldn't put it in the crock pot. You would put it in a regular pot.
No, but I guess the gilui das by Gecham Shamu is that you're only planning to keep it hot, and that's not true by a cholent pot. You do cook in it, maybe over a longer period of time, but maybe that's the point.
Yeah, it's funny. There are some posts who say that like in the more Chazanish side, and there are some posts who say this way that a hot plate is only a gilui das if it's only made to like some of them are called just a warmer. They really don't cook. Like let's say the average like those one temperature warmers probably won't cook it properly overnight. They just keep things warm. But you need to be cooked to begin with for them to work. So it's only a gilui das if it's a warmer, not a cooker. A slow cooker still has the word cooker attached to it. It's a cooker as opposed to just a warmer. It could be that maybe the pshat is that it's at that level of maybe they really wouldn't cook. Maybe they would just be just keep things warm to a degree. And so that would then not be a raya to a cholent pot, to a slow cooker. So that's a good point.
They don't discuss crock pots.
Pardon?
They're sure don't discuss crock pots. Unfortunate for us.
Okay. Now, another Nakuda in Mishnah Berurah was, just spoke about Chazar V'Huvra. Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Yadalid speaks about this, about the Paskins, the halacha of Chazar V'Huvra. It's okay. So just to review quickly, we spoke out the previous year question based on that sugya of Chazar V'Huvra that you put the Kafir Katan, and then it's your Megaladas, and then it reflamed up again. So what will the halacha be? We spoke out a few times ago that what will the halacha be if you cover you did Kafir Katan, and then somehow somebody walked by and knocked it off. So somehow the pot stayed on there, or the question is, can you put a pot on there? But let's say the pot stayed on there, but now it's not Garf Katam anymore. Is that going to be like Garf Katam or not? So that we saw some machlokas of Rishon Zalman and Ramosha, that Rishon Zalman held that once you're Megala Das, it's okay. It's like we spoke out then that by many Durabanans we find this. As long as you do the mice you're supposed to do with Durabanan, that's good enough. Like if you're eating with your wife privately and she's Anita, so you're supposed to put a hefsek on the shulchan between you, because there shouldn't be chiba at that meal, and let's say you put a thing on there, and then you put a toy between you or something like that, and then one of the kids runs in, unexpectedly runs in and grabs the toy and runs away. So we say that once you put it, it's good enough. It's still considered a hecker as long as you put it. Your megala das that you're not having that remains even if the thing falls away, the wind blows it away or something. So that was explained Rishon Zalman's story here, that even if the covering falls off, as long as you're megala das, then the gilui das remains. Moshe holds not that way. Moshe holds that the only reason it works is because, is that pen working okay?
Yeah.
So it's more pens. That Moshe holds that the only reason that Chazar V'Huvra is his cholak and pshat and sukya. Chazar V'Huvra, he makes a hanacha that Chazar V'Huvra is still good because even though the flame came back, but there's still some ashes there. So there's still a remainder of your hecker that you put to begin with. There still are ashes there. It's just despite the ashes, it flamed up again. Mashiach came over here, if it falls off completely, there's no hecker whatsoever, it's not going to work. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's machlokas. I don't think it's very much for that to happen or ever to come up, but there's the average one was almost relying on if it does. But the Maisa, halacha Maisa, you're also allowed to cover the fire on Shabbos. Like our fires, in those days, you couldn't do garf katam on Shabbos because it would be machabe the gachalin. It would be isra of kibui. But today, if you have a low fire going on your gas stove and for some reason the blech fell off, to put it back on is not a problem. So you could do the garf katam on Shabbos as well. But the similar case to that would be bisman chazal, is if you would. Even though you couldn't actually cover those flames, but you could put like this later on in Sif Gimel, that you put a pot over the opening in the fire, the gecholim in the bottom of the kira, and you put an empty pot on top of the kira, and you put a pot on top of that, then that creates a massive garf katam, which you could do even on Shabbos. So today, putting the blech on would be similar to that, which is okay. It's not machaba anything. Okay, now the Mishnah Berurah Sifkat and Yadalid that holds that this whole din of Chazar V'Huvra and all these din are Tali and Gilui Das, like we said we saw that from Rashi, from the Rishonim and the Sugya. So the question is, what would halacha be if somebody else would do the kis, would be machase? So somebody you have a guest staying at your house, and you forgot to put a blech, and someone else put the blech. Does that help? So Rabbi Yashiv says, of course, the double question that it does. Rabbi Yashiv says that it does because he says a Sforah that the din in Gilui Das is really it has to be Gilui Das in this fire. So as long as the Maisa Gilui Das was done in this H, then it works for anybody. He says it's not a din in the Gilui Das of the Gavra; it's really a din in the Gilui Das within the H that works for all the people. It's not a din that the Gavra, you have to, each one has to be Megala Das. If that would be the case, then it would be strange that, you have to say Chedushim, that the Balabas, he's Megala Das, so the Gilui Das works for everybody else. to start saying new Kedushin. Really, actually felt not that way. You don't have to come on to that. It's enough that the Aish has a Gilui Das in it. We'll see. It's not so pashut. We're going to see enough Kamidas in this question. Will come up in a few more shilas. Now that Mishnah Berurah, okay, I want to go back over that again. We'll just
would there maybe be a chiluk between Gechalim Shamimu? Because there's no Ma'asev Gilui Dat.
So there, the Rashba says the Gilui Das is the hanacha of the pot on those coals that you didn't stir up. So that was the same Gilui Das as covering the coals. So that you have to have a Gilui Das, but the Gilui Das is not, in that case, the Chiddush is, it's not done on the Etzem Eish, it's done by the hanacha on them. So there is a Gilui Das, but it's a different type of Gilui Das.
So that even for someone else would be Gilui.
But however, whenever we say it's good, in general, that will be good in that way as well. I mean, I guess the question will be, what about a different pot? So, but it's like, I don't know if it's like Gilui Das on the Aish. That sounds more like it's a Gilui Das inside the Gavra, because there's nothing really happened to that Aish, which is it's a good point. This is a bit of a Kashman Roel Yashuv, that Rashba seems to indicate that it is a din of the Gavra, not on the Aish, because nothing was done to the Aish. So it's a good point. Which I think we'll see other rayas not like Roel Yashuv as well as we go along. Now, just want to bring out a halacha of Rishon Zalman is Mchadesh, that let's say you put down the blech and you put a pot on there, and then you look down under the blech and you see that the fire is a little bit too small. You're afraid it might not keep the soup warm enough or whatever, so you turn up the fire a little bit. So Rishon Zalman says, and of course it's never pasha, but he speaks it out, that when you do that, then you just took away the whole heker of the blech, because the whole point of the blech is to show you won't be machata b'gechalim. And here you put the blech, and then you're machata b'gechalim, so you're oker the Gilui Das that it's not machata b'gechalim. And he says in other places, it's mashma that it doesn't matter whether you turned it higher or you turned it lower. Still, you're machata b'gechalim by doing that. So Rav Yashuv agrees to this as well. So in that case, if you did that and you realize you did it, then you would have to lift up the blech and put it back down again, l'shem Gilui Das, because the first Gilui Das you were oker by doing that ma'isa.
Even before Shabbos? That's when you did it before Shabbos?
Even before Shabbos, it's all before Shabbos. Obviously, this only happens on Shabbos. Before Shabbos, I mean, you weren't stirring you show that you do stir the coals despite this blech. So you have to take it up and then put it back down again. The shame. Okay, now I'm not going to do anything more to the fire. And so then the second time that'll be Megala Das. The first time you're oker that already.
So if you're it's lined with temple every week.
Pardon?
If you're a crock pot and it's lined with temple every week, you have to, after you turn on, you have to.
If you turn it on while it's already lined and the smoke's already in there, you have to pick out the chillum pot and put it back down again. Yeah, the same. Like so I'm putting it back down now. Now it's mechusa. I'm not going to touch it anymore. That's all.
Common though. But you turn the cholent down before Shabbos, so you have to lift it up and put it back down after you do that.
Yeah, you have to do that. Yeah, I stuck it to tell my wife.
Even if let's you do cover the knobs afterwards. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, so I think maybe there'll be enough probably if you would cover the knobs. Then that would be. I think that through, but possibly that would be. So now here's an interesting shiloh. So according to this, let's say you cover the fire, and you're Megala Das and everything like that, and then somebody else came along and they turned the fire up a little bit. So you had a good Gilui Das, then someone else came along and they changed it. So that Rishon Zalman says that that's not mafkia his das, right? That because if I was Megala Das first, I put the thing down and then I did it. So then I was Megala that it was not really a good thing. But the fact that someone else came along and stirred the coals, someone else changed the heat, and without me knowing it, obviously, if I gave him reshus and he did the same thing as I did it, but then smagal my das also. But if someone else did it, so that this is a finish that they will say because it's a klal in adam oser davar she'ein shelo. So like if your guest came along without reshus and he did that, so in adam oser davar shelo, so he doesn't have koach to aser what I did. Now there's a question on this. Just in Lumdus, a very geschmack question that there's a beer lacha later on in Sif Gimel.
Did we just say according to Shlomo the Gilus the Ishto, not the Gabra?
That Rabbi Yosef said that.
So for him, that would have to be a problem.
So according to Rabbi Yosef, it might be a problem. We'll see. I think most poskim don't hold that way. That's when I said Rabbi Yosef, I said we're going to see soon how it's. Others don't seem to agree with this. Seems to be a din of the Gavra because in Hanami, according to Rabbi Yosef, you were mafkia the Gili das in that age. But so I'll just or the following question in Sif Gimel, there the Bir Halacha speaks out that it brings down Rabbi Kiveger that in the din of Shia, the din of Hanacha al Gabi Karka. So Rabbi Kiveger says that if let's say you put it on the fire, you can't be Maniach al Gabi Karka. So let's say another person came. Rabbi Kiveger says another person comes along and he's Maniach al Gabi Karka. He takes it off. He wants to do something with it, puts it on the ground. So can the other person be mafkia, my שהייה? I put it down the fire and I plan to leave it there. This other guy came along, he put it on the karka. So Rabbi Kiveger says that on that we don't say ein adam oser davar she'ein shelo, because Rabbi Kiveger brings rayos in the sugya of ein adam oser davar she'ein shelo. That's only something that's tali b'machshava, but something that's tali b'maisa. It's totally in the Maisa. So then, if you do a Maisa to be mafkia something, that we don't say in Adam Oser Davar She'ein Shelo. It works. What the other person does works. So he says that when the Hanacha Gabi Karka, that's considered a Maisa, and so now the well, we'll get more into this recovery in a second, but Lachora, you could say that according to that, you can ask Kasha. If it's telling a Maisa, person did a Maisa, then we don't say in Adam Oser Davar She'ein Shelo, just like Hanacha Gabi Karka. So how could Rosh Hashanah say if another person raises the flame, then it doesn't affect my Gilui Das in this age because it's in Adam Oser Davar She'ein Shelo. He did a Maisa. It's not just a machshava. He did a Maisa of raising the fire. So, was a pillar. Why should that be a problem if someone else does it? In Adam Oser Davar She'ein Shelo. I mean, fakir. Why is it okay? He did a Maisa. We don't say in Adam Oser Shelo. So, I think to answer this, you hear the question? Everybody hear the question? Just to sum it again, Rosh Zalman says that if someone else raises the flame, it's not mafkia my machshava. The balabas put on there. He put a blech. He's megaladas. He's not mechatab b'cholim. In fact, someone else is mechatab b'cholim. He raised the fire. So then that we're not going to say is a problem because in Adam Oser Davar She'ein Shelo. But now we're asking it's a Maisa. Rabbi Kiveger says Hanach al Gabi Karka is a Maisa that is mafkia the שהייה. So let's say who would do over here.
Interesting, Pasha, that al Gabi Karka is the problem.
What do you mean?
Because the Shem, that's the problem for sure. Al Gabi Karka is that's the one that ruins everything for you.
Okay, and
so Al Gabi Karka is what ruins everything. Just maybe maybe Rabbi Kiveger would hold that it's just if you turn it up, it'll be okay.
Why though? What's the chiluk?
Al Gabi Karka is the problem. That's the only thing that we said was the Maisa. Al Gabi Karka was something that wasn't a safer, right?
Okay.
So maybe Dak Al Gabi Karka, where you did good about show, very good. Maybe Al Gabi Karka, so that now ruins everything for you.
But here's also your mechatab b'cholim, so it should ruin everything. Of course, it should ruin the Gilui Das that on this age that there's no chitui in this age. There is. He did a Maisa to do Maisa chitui. So I think you're saying what Yisrael's saying is right. I'll explain what you're saying. Maybe your main tzazagin is here's what you mean. You mean to say like this. Yisrael means, I'll explain what Yisrael said. That taking off I think the answer is, so we just said, taking the pot off and putting on the karka, that's a Maisa Siluk from the Shehiyah Rishona. The Rambam, that's the only thing the Rambam paskin out of all the other, he didn't paskin the stuff, he didn't mita, and he only paskin with karka, like Kesher said, because that's Rov of the Amoraim and the Gemara held that put it on the karka, that's a Siluk Be'etzem from the Shehiyah. It's afka from the Shehiyah Be'etzem by putting a gabi karka. So it's okra the whole Shehiyah that was there before, and it's not a davar that's totally b'machshava. It's totally b'maisa. According to the Rambam doesn't say that it helps to think you're going to put it back on. The Rambam doesn't mention machshava. The Rambam paskins that putting on the gabi karka is lagamri hafka. So the maisa itself is a pure maisa of silik, and it's mafkia the first Shehiyah. And to put it back on now would be considered Shehiyah l'hatchila. Would be considered a new maisa Shehiyah, which is mechzik kamavasha, which should be aser. Now, by raising the fire, according to Rishon Zalman, there's no maisa, there's no bittul of the etzem maisa garfakatam. Garfakatam is still there. It's still garfakatam. You still have a blech there, and this person was Megala Das. It's now becomes a din that's tali b'das. Does he have das or not? To be the fact that it was taken off and put on the karka, does that, or I'm sorry, the fact that someone else did something, is that change his das that he still doesn't plan to be garfakatam? Isn't planned to be chata b'gecholim. So to say that there's a new gilui das over here, so that already ain't on him also davar shalo, same as shalo. There was no maisa silik over here. There was only a maisa that perhaps will be megal something about the das that you plan to be b'cholim. You're the chiluk. In other words, if you would have been oker somehow the whole garfakatam, the etzem chefsa of the garfakatam, then nenachanami. So that would be similar to putting to be mafkia the whole shehiyah that was, and the chefsa of the shehiyah is gone, and now you have to start a new shehiyah. The Maisa did that over there. Here, the Maisa never was mafkia the garfakatam. It only was a Maisa that might be megala b'daitoi, that he was first megala das. That I'm not going to mechata b'gecholim. Now someone did a Maisa in it that says, oh, maybe you do have das to mechata b'gecholim. So that, since it's a gili b'daitoi, so in Adam also davar and shalo, Yenim, the other guy doesn't have the power to megala my das.
Did you also say that putting it back is not? Would that be a no maybe?
What mana?
If you put it on the ground.
Well, that's what we're saying. There would be called a shehiyah l'chatchila. It'd be a new, since you're mevatel the shehiyah, it's called a new shehiyah, which is mixed with kamavashal. That's a whole new shehiyah now, and that's mitzvah metzias is like that. So the ma'isa was a real ma'isa in the etzem shehiyah. Here, there's nothing happened in the etzem shehiyah or in the etzem garfakatam. Here, it's only the fact is machata. It's a gilui das. Well, they say it's his gilui das, not my gilui das. So what I was megala das still works for me. Yeah. So does that make sense?
It's clear, but I'm just wondering because like there's also machlokas in the Gemara whether or not das could, if you have das l'hachzir, then that would make al gabi karka okay. So like, right? So how could al gabi karka be complete? Removal. It's totally in the das to some degree.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That we're going in the dais over here that al gabi karka is afka lagamri, like in the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't say anything about das. So das is not lomala b'lamorid. The Rambam didn't paskin those for das. Either does the Shulchan Aruch. So we that do. So if a person puts it on the ground to let's say the other person puts it on the ground, I don't know if his das counts because according to us, it'll be a question. Remember, Kvager is talking in the dayas that hold that. Yeah. So like the other person, let's say, puts it on the ground to and has das not to put it back, or
Well, it doesn't matter because in Adam also davar shein shalom, right? So it wouldn't matter what it does.
Yeah. So I think like there's still going to be a chiluk that really the Hanach Gabi Karka is a silik. It's considered a silik be'etzem. Just those, according to the Ramah, that's with Saraf Das. So then it makes it that Maisa silik. It turns it into not Maisa silik. So that's Vaita Tali and Das. But the etzem Maisa itself was a Maisa silik. So if the person put it down there to without Das to put it back on, so then without a work connected the Balabas's Das to keep it on there, because he didn't do that Maisa. The other person did it. So then he had the koach to do a Maisa, and it's guilty to proven innocent. The Maisa itself is a mafkia of the Shahiyah.
Meaning as opposed to like the
Yeah.
And as opposed to like the regular scenario where you're like you're saying guilty until proven innocent. Like it is a silik, but that you could save it with your das, as opposed to the opposite, where it would be not a silik unless you have no das.
Right. Okay. Just so there's a geschmack, I think I'll just throw this out. And once it's too long, it'll take too long. But there's a second Nakuda and Reb Kveger there in that Bir Halacha and Sif Gimel that he says he's told of this whole question of in Machlokas Tanayim L'Gabe Kilayim, that by Kilayim you need, let's say you need to plant the Kilayim there, and you have to have das. If you put it there but you didn't have das for it to stay, then doesn't asr the kerem, the Kilayim. You need to have also das for it, like the miyayish, for it to stay there. Miyayish das, that it's gonna stay planted over there, and to make it into a that's where the makra of the din of in adam osa davashen shalo, that you can't, that the other person's das to keep the Kilayim planted there doesn't asr your thing. So Rabbi Gregor is tola the this din on the halacha over there. So Rav Shach and Navi Ezri, he has a kasha on Rabbi Gregor, just a very geschmack once we're on this subject, that he says that you can't be medama the das over here. This is similar to what we're just saying. The das over here to the das over there by Kilayim, because there it's the Xeris that the Kilayim only asers with das. The das itself is the pu'ula to make it aser. So that's why over there we say in Adam Osa Darshan Shalom, because I can't provide the das against him to aser his kerem, and if he didn't have das for that, then I can't come and use my das to be miyash and keep it there. I'm saying over here that it's not that das that's creating the iser, it's like it's taking the pot off and putting it on the ground. That's the Mitzias already still look from that. So the das is only something which prevents it from being foul, but the Maisa itself is not. There's no din das over here. It's just the dot. The stam milsa, the stem of the milsa is when it's on the ground. Then it's mufka from that. Mufka from the original Shahiyah. So on that we won't say in Adam Osir Davashen Shalom, because it's not that the das not to put it back on that made it usher. It's the etzem putting it on the ground that made it usher. Maybe the das could help if you didn't have das to put. If you had das to put it back on, but you don't need das to leave it on the ground to make it usher. It's usher because it's on the ground. Mashenkin by Kilayim you actually need the das to make it usher. The das itself is one of the main ingredients b'deraisa to make the Kilayim usher. So it's a different type of a das. That's without going too far into the sugya. That's as a kasha and figures whole comparison. So sushtel. Okay, getting back to the Mishnah Berurah, we're over time, but I'll try to. Wow, there's so much more to talk about. Still have the promise just begun.
Still have a Hanukkah for it also.
I didn't have das for that. Well, yeah. So the similarity over here, if the Rosh Zalman's vort that if you put it on there, if the thing fell off, it'll be so to Mekayim your bakasha. So that'll be similar to the din of kavsa in zakukla. That's by the Durban is also, if you had a sheer adlaka of chatzisha, and then it's a machlokas in the Gemara, but we paskin that as long as you lit a shir hadlaka, it lasts for a half hour, and a ruach mitzuya, there's no ruach mitzuya that will put it out. So even if you lit it and then all of a sudden a ruach she'ena mitzuya came along, an unexpected ruach which is beyond the norm came and blew it out. So we say pakafsa enzok, like you're not mechuyev to, once you did the ma'isa hadlaka, and there could have been mefarsan the nace for a half hour, even if it went out in zakukla, which is one of the most and the drabanan. As long as you did the ma'isa you need to do, and it's enough that you don't say already with that. So we similar to the according to Rishon Zalman, if the pach fell off, if you covered it, and as long as you did the ma'isa, it's enough to. So we're also Yotze Chanukah. That's the din kafsa in zakukla.
Rabbi, isn't the acre difference when it comes to someone else putting the pot on the ground is that the original Megale Das, he still has to do an action. In the first instance, when someone just turns up the fire, then he can just stay in his Gilu Das. He doesn't have to do an action. But with a pot, he has to do a ma'aseh of putting it back on the pot. I think maybe that's the major difference there in the two tzirin.
Yeah, well, that's sort of included what we're saying. Is that's really that's the whole word of al gavi karka. We say that it's a silik from the whole shahiyah rishona. So then the problem becomes if the original shia is gone, and then put it back on now, it's called the shia lachatchila, which then is also because of mixed kamavashal. Right. Okay. All right. Just to go on here. Spoke about that already. Okay, let's say you're eating by a family. You're invited to a family. You go and you see that they have the food up, not gar for katam, or the chor should have been. Are you allowed to eat there now? That's on Shabbos. So if they were, you get there and all of a sudden you realize that they were not makayim gar for katam. They didn't do it on purpose. They just didn't know any better. So we've already spoke out once that there's the halacha according to the Gra in the beginning of Shin Ches. Hassan was like Rav Meir. We had the three shitas. We had Rav Yehuda, Rav Meir, and Rav Yochanan and Sandler, and the Bryce in many places in Shas Mishnah and the Brisa that if the Isser of Meister Shabbos, if somebody was Machal Shabbos and let's say B'shogeg and cooked, let's say on Shabbos, Mamish cooked on Shabbos, can you be nenifarmer or not? So we paskin like Rav Yochanan and Sandler. I'm sorry, paskin like Rav Meir that the Shulchan Aruch paskin like Rav Yehuda that it's Asr until Motzei Shabbos. That's the Pshat of the Shulchan Aruch in Shin Ches. The Gra, very, very, very long Gra in the beginning of Shin Ches. It proves many rayas that we pass like Rav Meir, not Rav Yehuda. And so we say Shogeg, if you're Mavashal on Shabbos for Shogeg, then it's Mutter B'diavad. We're allowed to be, the Mishnah Berurah there in Shin Ches says that we can be samach on the Gra B'shas Tzorach, B'eis Tzorach. So if these people accidentally cooked on Shabbos, mamish, they cooked something that was also to cook and they did it on Shabbos, but they didn't know any better, they thought it's mutter for some reason, then you could eat it. It wouldn't be usher. It's a shot about the pot and everything like that, but if it needs to be kosher afterwards, but the mice we possibly that it's mutter to eat. And the Gra says over there, kosher can by derabbanans is mutter. If it's mutter by deraisa, kosher by derabbanans. That's why we said, if you have a guest and he brings you a bottle of wine that he's coming Friday night, for whatever reason you had a heter to invite him Friday night, and so he swung by the grocery store and picked up a bottle of wine on the way. It was already after Shabbos and bought a bottle of wine for you and brought it to you. So now that wine betzim should be usher midrabanan because he bought it on Shabbos and a lot of the isser midrabanan were done. Nothing was really done in the chefs of the wine. It would only be the midrabanan to use it. But since it was b'shogeg, then it's mutter b'diavad to use like based on the same Rav Meir. That's what the Gra says. L'chor we have a drabanan over here as well. However, we have this halacha of shachach, and the Mishnah Berurah says shachach hudin shogeg b'din. That's the Gemara says shachach is aser. Why is it aser? Because when it comes to this isser of שהייה וחזרה, שהייה is aser because Because that a special gzera by Shehiyah that Shema people will be marrying, they'll do harama and they'll say we were shogeg, and since it's only the rabbanan, people might be over this, easily over this because you're not really doing anything besides just leaving it on the fire, but it was already cooked before. So the Gra over here when it agrees that there's an Isser b'di'evid, even b'di'evid, if they were shagag b'din, has din like shachach. So now it depends. So it depends. If it was something which really needed ikar din to be garfakatum, or it's only a chumrah to do garfakatum. So if it was already cooked, so if when they put it up on the fire before, let's say before Shabbos without garfakatum, if it was totally raw, then we have the heter chai. Then we some kind of chazanish for that shasachak. Like somebody asked, we some kind of chazanish. That we saw that we would have the chazanish. Vagozer. If it was already mavushal a third, then we have where some kind of Rashi that it didn't need to be garfakatim. Close to if it was called sarko, or if it was stomach yafalo, or all these cases. Once it was the third cook, then the only possibility, the place where it might be usher would be if it was bashal below bashal. If you had some reason to know that they started cooking it before Shabbos, but there was a little bit cooked, but not, and it wasn't chai anymore. It wasn't yet machal ben rasoy. Only then would it be Yasser B'di'evid because of this Gzera. But I don't know if you need to be concerned that it was exactly at that state before they put it up. Even if it was a chont, let's say, it's very possible if they put it up that wasn't exactly in that level that it needed to be garfakatum. Maybe it was raw when they first put it up, or maybe it was already, by the time Shabbos came, it was already cooked, that it could be eaten a third cooked already, which it's very hard to define what's the third cook, but it would be something that would already be a somewhat edible stew before Shabbos came in. So to have to be koshish, and maybe it was in the realm of that, within that window of 1/3 from a little bit to 1/3 to be koshish for that, and which is it's a chash and a drabanan. I don't know if you have to be koshish dafka for that. I think I could say something going to the kula on that there's a lot of studying that maybe it was done enough to not need to really make her din be garfakatum. So although if you know for sure they were over in Ishbashihiyah, even b'shogeg, it will be usher to eat it. You have to, excuse yourself from, somehow you're too hot to eat anything hot today. You feel too hot, you can't. Your whole family feels very hot today. They just can't eat anything hot. So we can't eat your hot shon. We also can't eat your green leafy vegetables, and we also can't. There's a lot of things to work out before. It's good to work out before Shabbos with them to make sure that they do it right. But
if they heated up the challahs, you're in trouble.
Pardon?
If they heated up the challahs, you're in trouble.
Yeah, the challahs also it was Michael ben Dersoy, it was already Moshe called Sarko, so that's also not a problem. Shtama. Okay. So that's as far as that goes. So that's only those are the nakudas on Sif Aleph. So some nakudas on Isa. There's still Beis Gimel and Dal. There isn't that much more to go, but we're already getting a little bit late. Maybe we'll. I don't know. I'm just afraid it might take a little longer than I think to cover the rest. There's not that much more to go, but should I go further? I mean, you guys want to go on, or should we another 5-10 minutes, or should we hold it to another 5 minutes? Should we go? Okay, I'll try another. Since for Hanukkah, well, it says most of Hanukkah, we add more in Hanukkah, more light. So we'll do it. We'll do it. The chavod, the soldiers, add a few more minutes beyond our, they're going beyond their comfort zone, so we'll go on beyond our comfort zone for a few minutes. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch Sif Bey says that you can only return a kol zman shki rasachas as long as it's still roseach. That's one of the Tanaim you need for Chazara is called Manshi Rasachas. Just this is really not Nagia to Chazara itself is more Shinul Ches, but just to speak out that what's called Rasachas, the Mishnah Berurah alludes to it over here as well, that Tanai is not totally in all these Stadim of the Gemara of Odav Yodo and Das. Rasachas is an elemental thing. The Kuli Alma is not Rasachas, it's not cooked. It's not still cooked. Let's say it's a liquid thing and it's not cooked to put it back in the fire because it could be Bishul Mamish. But the Shulchan Aruch that says Rasachas means it has to at least be still Yatsa Lettucebo, perhaps even more than that. So this is told in a Machlokas later on in Shnei Ches, in Siftas Vav, there's a Ramah in Siftas Vav. We mentioned a couple of times already that the Shitas Ramah doesn't still need to be Rasachas. Rather, it's enough that it's still warm. And the definition of warm is when you eat it, you still feel like you're eating warm food. So, because the Ramah holds that as long as even by liquids, as long as it's still warm, so then it's not considered a new cooking because the old cooking is still present. It's still chal in it. Let's say if it's lach, if it's wet and it's cooled down completely, it's not warm anymore. So then we paskin some machos b'shonu, but we paskin that to heat it back up again, since by the ikar bishul by lach is that it still remains warm. It lost that, so then it's considered like totally new cooking, and it would be Nisa Deraisa, according to many Rishonim. The Shiloh, but we're not clear that it's Nisa Deraisa. So that's a Das Ramah. The Shulchan Aruch holds that it has to still be at least Yatsa Lettucebo, perhaps even more. When it goes below that, then it's not considered Moshel anymore. So it's a enough community between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. But like the Shulchan Aruch Ramah, to what degree it still has to be to do Chazara, how hot does it still need to be? As Sephardim, it's much more chomer, has to still be at least Yatsa Lettucebo. And according to the Ramah, it's enough that it's still just warm. And we had the Rabbeinu Yonah that the Beis Yosef quotes. The Rabbeinu Yonah, he speaks about Barichos, is that as long as it lost its koach of bishul, its koach rasicha, then it's also considered bishul, even if it's way beyond God's lettucebo, but it's no longer able to be cook other things, then to put it back into a matzah of cooking, that's considered bishul. Tremendous chumrah. We're trying to speak about that. We can't really spend too much time on the Ben Yonah, but according to Ben Yonah, for example, there's going to be a halacha that, let's say you want to add water to the cholent, so you got a big problem because if you pour the water into a cup from the urn, and then you try to want to pour that in the cholent pot and then put it back on the fire, so then you have a problem because then that when the water went into a klisheni, since klisheni ain't mavashal, klisheni doesn't cook. So now to put it back into a matzah that's going to be cooked, then that's going to be an Isser Bishul. According to Rabbeinu Yonah, the only way to add water would be to take off the cholent pot, put it directly under the urn, and then open the urn into the cholent pot directly. So there's no time that it ever lost its koach rasichus, its power to cook, because it's still irui is mavashal. So irui is pouring out. It's still in the matzah that it's mavashal, so that it didn't lose its koach, and then you can put it back on the fire. But you couldn't put it into a cup first. Whereas according to the way we paskin in other video, you could put it in a cup and then from there put it into the pot and put it back on, because as long as it's still hot and there's no bishul in it, as long as it didn't cool down less than warm, which all the kavachomer if it's still boiling in a cup. Okay. Now the Mishnah Berurah and Nun Hey and Nun Vav is Marich, which it's always good to see that inside. We don't have time to go through inside now, but he explains very clearly that all these Tanaim over here that we need, Odav Yodo and etc. and Das and everything, they're all Kedushim in Mixik and Mavashal. If it's missing Das, let's say you take it off without Das, if it's put on the karka, we understand Mixik and Mavashal. The Chiddush is that, let's say, the same Odav Yodo works, or according to the way we're machmir, that you need Odav Yodo and Das. It's a Chiddush to say that Das, the Chisaron of Das, turns it into Mixik and Mavashal. That's a Chiddush. But so that's how that Shita is paskin. If you need both Tanayim, the Das also, the Mishnah Berurah explains, it goes into the equation of Mixik and Mavashal. If you're missing Das, you're missing that. However, we know that Ramal paskins B'diavad, if you didn't have das, if you only had one of them, then Ramah Paskin is just one of them alone doesn't have to be Somachan because it's the machlokas and it's the Shaila and the Drabanan. It's a machlokas, so we have Safek Drabanan Lakula, and additionally to be Mitzaref, the Ramah is very much Mitzaref the Yerushalmi, like the Ran, or the Rishonim, or the Yerushalmi that holds that the whole Isser is only from Erev Shabbos to Shabbos, but from Shabbos to Shabbos, everything is mutter, according to the Yerushalmi. Even putting on Gabi Karka with no das to put it back on, there's no way to be mafkia the Shia because taking it off, it's all like one unit. Shabbos is one unit, off, on, whatever, doesn't matter. The whole problem is only from Erev Shabbos to Shabbos. So besides that, the machlokas within the Bavli, there's also the Yerushalmi to mitzaref to it, and therefore, if we had only one Tanai, then B'diavad Kusava, and even in B'diavad, if it's Mamish Machon Sarech, even without Das, Agavi Karka, the Ramah says that the minig is to be Mekel if you didn't have Das. So all the questions we asked before, could another person, does it help with him mafkia, my Das, if you put it on the Gavi Karka, that's all if you hold it, not like the Ramah. According to the Ramah, all those things for sure are not going to be a problem because even myself, if I took it off, put on the Gavi Karka, B'diavad, I could put it back on because I could be Somachan Yerushalmi, B'diavad. So, Kavachomer, if somebody else put it on the ground, then it's not going to usher it. But we try ideally to have all the Tanayim, to have Das and to have Odo B'yodo. But like we mentioned once before, that by a Sholent, if you want to add water to the Sholent, and you're the only one awake before shul, so there's almost no way to. It's kiman impossible to do that. But yeah, I thought it starts at 10. So if there's no way to have B'yodo and to go fill up a cup of water and have it Odo B'yodo with two hands, there's no way. Something is going to have to be out of your hands, either the cup of water or the cholent pot, unless you're Hercules or a miracle worker or something like that, or you have a third hand. So we're always going to have to be so much on this run to you put it, ideally not to put it on the ground, put it on the countertop, or put it on one of those pot holders, whatever, put on there. So and have dust, put it back on, pour the water back in, pour the water into the cholent pot, and then return it back to the fire. Okay, there are a number more questions over here, but I guess we'll have to hold it here. Maybe we'll try to mashlim it another time, next time. Hashem. For this coming week, we want to do the tour in Beis Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch with Mr. Kalim and the Mishnah Berurah on Sifhei. Sifhei is very widespreading Sif. There's a lot of Nekudas over here. Sifhei itself is a whole sugya on its own right, which that'll finish for us this week, the coming week, the Reish Nun Gimel, and then we'll see where we're going to go from there. וחזרה. Afreich Chanukah, and great Shabbos.
Shabbos. Zakubal.
Sure.
Call to.